Hello, everyone. Welcome to this presentation by me. I'm Jolan Weitz, and my colleague Mareke Everts. We're both colleagues of the Europeana Collections Engagement Team, and today we want to present the work that we've been doing in diversity and inclusion in Europeana after about a year now of leading the Europeana D&I cross team. So we want to give you just some insight in the work we did, what is ongoing work, and some work in the future. And that's basically what the next 20 minutes will be. So we'll start off by just giving some background, some context on how we came to having a cross team for diversity and inclusion in Europeana, why we did that, what the origin story is there, and we'll continue on with talking about what the specific objectives were, what we mean by working on diversity and inclusion in Europeana and digital cultural heritage. And then we'll talk about some of the work that we've actually been doing, some of the actions that we've been taking, the achievements that we already have gotten to along the way, ongoing work, and then we'll finish off with hopefully what the next steps will be. We'll be looking ahead at the next year or so of diversity and inclusion work in Europeana.
So I will just go through a quick recap of what we presented here last year, which was that our team, the collections engagement team, wanted to focus a bit more on diversity and inclusion. And Yolan, I, and our colleague Isabel, and a few others in our team were already working on things, on editorials specifically around Black history, LGBTQ history as well, and a small bit on disability as well. And we realized that we were just not doing enough and we wanted to do a lot more. So we did broach the subject with our teammates, who were all very happy to want to put more focus on diversifying our editorials. And as well as our educational materials. So that's something that we kind of focused on last year, where we went through the fact that we had very, very little diversity in our editorials, and it was something that we wanted to do. And also in a few of our campaigns, we already started doing. And we also mentioned that we saw the importance of working with other teams in Europeana, because not only to be able to create more diversity in our editorials, we needed more diverse content, which is quite hard to come by on our website. So we would need the support of our other teammates who actually work directly with aggregators, who are the bridge between Europeana and our cultural heritage institutions, getting in the content to make it visible on Europeana. So there was a lot, so not only this work, but of course, as well as making sure our events would be accessible. And just, we realized there's just a lot more than just what we're doing in our team, but that our whole organization needed to work on being more diverse and inclusive. And I think we also mentioned just where we were and where we want, like what we wanted to achieve. So basically, literally a few of the things I mentioned, working closer with other team members and making sure that our organization was more inclusive, but also kind of expanding, not just within our organization, but within our network and our partners as well. So we're going to talk then more a bit about how that's been more of a focus point this year within the organization, and how we actually formed a cross team around diversity and inclusion.
Great, thank you. So to add a bit to the context that Marek already gave about how we came to getting a cross team together on diversity and inclusion, we kind of have to look back at last year, 2020, and actually even the year before. I mean, the need for focusing on diverse content, diverse voices, diverse people isn't something new in Europeana. There have been some kind of scattered ad hoc initiatives or discussions that were had over the past years, of course. An example of that is that at our annual conference in 2019, several voices went up saying that, well, the people that are attending this conference don't seem to be very diverse. There's a lot of, white men attending this conference. How can we diversify our audience, our community? And based on that, a kind of informal online Basecamp group, which is a kind of online forum, was set up to have discussions about this and to share, knowledge and initiatives. So there has been there have been things in the work before 2020 for sure. So in 2020, though, because of in general higher awareness of the need for more diversity and inclusion, the heightened awareness also of being activist in your own organization, in your own community, has kind of solidified all of those ad hoc initiatives into a bigger kind of focus towards diversity in Europeana itself. We also experienced some really kind of difficult discussions and events that happened in 2020, not at least in our annual event in 2020, or our annual conference rather, that led us to, or led mostly the Europeana directors to really understand that focus on diversity and inclusion really needs to be a bigger structural point within Europeana. So these kinds of events that happened led the directors not only to put more importance on this in the business plan for 2021, but also led them to have a set up a cross team, because me and Mareka and Isabel said we're already working on diversity in 2020, and they acknowledged that we were already working on that. So it was kind of natural to have us set up a cross team in that effect. So that's kind of what was the backstory to us creating a cross team mostly. And I also talked about the fact that diversity and inclusion now is a part of our business plan. So Europeana's business plan and business goals were updated in 2021. This is a screenshot of that webpage that kind of lays out the business plan for the next 5 years until 2025. And one of the focal points there is being more diverse and inclusive. So one of the main kind of values that Europeana subscribes to and really wants to bring more to the forefront is that cultural heritage empowers society to embrace its diversity and flourish. And it's kind of under that value that the cross team was created, trying to really achieve that through structural action and through getting people from across Europeana together within this cross team work. So I'll give it back to Mareka to talk a bit more about what this cross team actually is, what the structure is, and what work we do within it.
So we are composed of 14 people across the organization. Jolan, myself, and Gina van der Linden, who is our event manager, are all co-chairs of this cross team. So we work around bi-weekly agendas and make sure that everyone has a voice and make sure that everyone can actually put their input into the agenda. So it's not just us actually deciding on what the agendas for the bi-weekly meetings are. So everyone actually does have a say in the structures of our meetings. Here you can see all the people part of our cross team, and it's quite a wide variety of people within the organization, which is great because it means we have different voices and people who can also take responsibility for the different teams and lead on work related to their various team members. We also have a member from HR, which is really, really valuable to us because we found it very important to include HR, especially in discussions around diversity inclusion. It's not just work around editorials or events or data, but it also involves staff people, policymaking as well. And we've got someone in our team who also deals with that as well. So it's quite a well-rounded cross team. So as already mentioned before, we have biweekly meetings that the co-chairs are responsible for organizing, and of course discussing different action points and making sure we're all on the same page and the progress is happening at the pace that we want it to happen. As I also already mentioned, it is quite it's quite a horizontal team structure, so everyone is allowed to decide on what the agenda for the day is going to look like. Everyone has a say, and we're not doing the decision making ourselves. One of the really great ways of working, having these meetings, is that we use a Trello board, which is kind of a great way to show transparency in the work we're doing, because we're all able to add to it, mention when we've done certain actions. All our ideas are there, and one of our the lead of our cross team, Julia Fallon, actually is able to use everything that we've put into our Trello board to go back to our directors and share what we've discussed and our progress as well. And as I mentioned before, the cross team definitely takes responsibility for certain actions and certain areas that they report to, because we all come from various teams, and lead on sharing that communication back to them and communicating from the team back to the cross team as well. When we initially formed the cross team, one of the things we wanted to do was hold a workshop together so that we can decide together on one, what we actually thought this team was about, what was the type of work we would be doing, and also the values that we saw that would come out of it for our organization as well. Where we wanted to see our organization be in a few months to some years from now. And some of the objectives that we came up with 5 objectives through this workshop, and also a bit of work done before as well. One of the things that we all found was very, very important was to make sure that we were all trained around diversity and inclusion. Not just in the cross team itself, but also throughout the whole staff, especially when you say as an organization that you find diversity and inclusion important and that you want to embed this. It is important that all staff members are trained around being respectful towards each other, and also just making sure that it's something that is on our minds constantly throughout the different types of work we do, because it does go across the whole organization and is not just set within our cross team or a few individual people themselves, but no matter where you are, if you're director, manager, then we all get the same training. Another thing that we also found important was making sure that D&I would be embedded into Europeana Foundation, also in our internal policies. So also making sure that it wasn't just something that's set within the organization, but it was something that was practiced also with our network and our partners as well. And making sure that our editorials and educational materials were also have a focus of diversity and inclusion, or at least making sure that they are a lot more diverse than they have been in the past. And also addressing different diverse content on Europeana. And this is related to the fact that though we don't have so much diverse content, we have a few that have old terminologies, that are considered offensive today, or there's some cultural heritage that that are from museums, but let's say the communities that they don't belong to might not have actually had a say on how these cultural heritage content is displayed online or also physically in the museums. But right now we're specifically talking about online, digitally, how they are licensed as well. So it's more about finding a respectful way of displaying this material where the people, the diverse communities that are impacted by, let's say, the language, or that it's their cultural heritage materials and the licensing, actually have a say on how they want these displayed, what vocabulary they want used around it, what kind of context they want around it as well. And of course, accessibility of Europeana, our websites, but also our physical spaces and our online events. We felt like this is something extremely important to make sure that everyone has access to Europeana, no matter where you come from, no matter no matter your abilities as well.
Great. Thank you, Mareka. So before going into some more kind of ongoing work or achievements we had, I wanted to focus on some pieces of work that we achieved over the past year that maybe aren't huge achievements in the grander scale of things, but to me do really show that we are this awareness of the need for diversity and inclusion is heightening across the rest of the organization, and is resulting in people thinking more critically about where can I just change my daily work or the documents that I'm working in or the things that I'm doing just a little bit to further this cause of being more diverse and inclusive in the broadest sense possible. So one of the things that has been achieved in the past few months is that all of Europeana.eu, so our main platform, now allows us to put alt text on every image that we have in our editorial. So we have an accessibility cross team that is only focused on making our platforms more accessible, and creating and allowing alt text on Europeana is something that was already a bigger plan, a bigger part of their work, but I do feel like it has been accelerated by the creation of the diversity and inclusion cross team, who has put more focus on the need for just more platform accessibility. So getting the possibility to put alt text on all of our images is a small but really important achievement. The same has happened now for Europeana Pro, our other professional platform, and we're currently in the process of kind of auditing if that alt text that we're now using is actually useful, if it is benefiting people, if it is actually making a difference for the better. Another thing that we've been able to do is to experiment with paying people from certain underrepresented communities, or from people that are from communities that don't really have a big representation of their stories in Europeana, to invite them into Europeana to write some pieces of editorial, write some blogs about their lived experience, about their background, and then also fairly pay them for the work that they've done. So that's a bit of an experiment that we did over the past months and has been really successful. One example is that we had a really good blog from someone from the Roma community to write a blog about the history of Roma and the enslavement of Roma throughout European history, which is something that we in the collections team don't really have a lot of expertise on. We're not from that community ourselves, but we were able to pay someone from that community to come and tell their story on Europeana.eu. So we're very glad that we were able to do that. The third point here is that in our annual conference this year, one of the 5 main topics, strands within the conference, will be diversity and inclusion. So that means that we will see a lot of really interesting presentations and discussions going on in that conference about diversity and inclusion in the cultural heritage space, which I think will be very interesting as well. And then lastly, another small change, but I do think an important achievement, is that the employee handbook that we give to new employees when they come into Europeana has now been tweaked a bit so that the language that is used in that is more gender neutral and so more inviting to people that maybe don't fit within the gender binary. And these really small changes maybe aren't noticed by everyone, but I do think it might be noticed by people that we do want to feel more invited to Europeana too. So I'm very happy that we can do small things like that. So over the past few months, we've worked with Lauren Vargas, who is a consultant on diversity and inclusion, to develop a community pact and to work on our code of conduct, so that we can really come into our own when it comes to organizing digital events, and being a part of this digital community, and managing this digital community that Europeana is very embedded in, and focused on. Another thing we did that was very successful was we kind of bundled all of the objectives and actions together that we wanted to achieve within diversity and inclusion cross team, and kind of poured that into a sort of roadmap for the next year and beyond. So the 5 objectives that Mareka talked about earlier were the 5 main objectives within that roadmap, and putting things within a roadmap kind of structure really helped other teams and other people of staff within the organization to take responsibility for certain actions and put that into their own implementation plans for next year, which hopefully means that we'll see a lot more actions towards diversity and inclusion over the coming year. And then lastly, we also want to be as transparent as we can possibly be about the work we're doing within the diversity and inclusion cross team, which means that we try to kind of write news posts and be very public about the work we're doing. So on our pro platform, Europeana Pro, we have published a few blog posts about the structure of the cross team, who is part of that cross team, what actions we're working on, what our ongoing work is, to keep that connection with the community and make sure that people know what we're working on, and hopefully either get in contact with us or get inspired by the work that we're doing. Yeah.
So some things we've also been working around in regards to editorials, projects, and education is that this year we have actually adopted some diversity and inclusion approaches to some of our generic services projects. So some of them are Weave, Pagoda, and Sports. For Weave, Weave actually works directly with diverse communities who have generally been underrepresented, and it works to bring these communities together with cultural heritage institutions to get their content digitized as well onto Europeana, but this time it's actually working directly with the communities who have that cultural heritage, and so are able to say how they want it presented, and so the power is actually back to them as to how they want their cultural heritage presented onto Europeana. We also have the Pagoda project, which Yolan here is actually a part of, and this is directly working on Chinese cultural heritage, so writing editorials, getting Chinese cultural heritage content on Europeana, and also an exhibition around Chinese cultural heritage. So for our sports project, we work with a variety of partners as well across Europe. Some of them have content that showcases disability in sports, and also more and also cultural heritage materials of Southeast Asians related to sports, and also of Black heritage related to sports as well. So there is a variety of materials that will be used for educational and also editorial resources, whereas in the past our projects had may have had a few things. For example, one we mentioned last year, which was the migration campaign was specifically around migrants, but now we've got different projects here that are a variety of have a variety of topics within them that focus on diversity and inclusion. And one thing that we've been testing out and have wanted to do for a long time was actually pay a guest writer to write editorial piece for us, specifically someone that is from a minoritized background, because though we are a not-for-profit organization, we do realize that it is a privilege to be able to write editorials um, um, without getting compensated for it, and not everyone can actually afford to do so. So we wanted to not only support people from minoritized backgrounds by producing and representing them in our editorials, but also actually financially supporting them by allowing them to use their expertise to write editorials for us. In that way, also bringing their narratives into our editorials, and of course financially supporting them as well. And one of our campaigns happening this year is of Black History Month in October, specifically focused on Black history in Europe. We have actually done a small season, or let's say an ad hoc season around Black history in February alongside Pride Month. And we wanted to put, for the month of October, a bit more prominence on Black History Month, and actually make it into a campaign where we're also working on an exhibition, getting different institutions to write editorials for us, interview them as well, institutions focused on Black history, and of course put a bit more focus on Black history in Europe, because a lot of the content we have, though lacking around Black history, is mainly focused on the American Black history, and we have felt that the European side has been quite lacking, not only in our own editorials, but we are aware that it is something that hasn't been of a huge prominence as well in general, where we are not very much aware of historical figures that have contributed to European history, and there are quite a few of them. And so also on the educational side, this year, diversity inclusion has also taken a prominent focus. And one of the things that has happened is that they have, our colleague Isabel, who leads on the educational side, working with teachers and educators across Europe, who make online learning scenarios for their classrooms, physically and also online, have put diversity as one of the main themes and topics for the year 2020 to 2021. And they've created 8 learning scenarios focused on the topic of diversity and inclusion. And from those 8 learning scenarios, 4 of those learning scenarios were documented by teachers who actually used them, and made stories out of them, showcasing how they were used, and also giving feedback on things that could be improved, which is actually quite useful as well. The educational community also made a challenge around reinventing Beethoven. So it was for teachers and students to be creative around the lives and works of Beethoven. And of course, some of the topics around that were also mental health and disability, considering Beethoven was hard of hearing, and also had depression as well. And it also not only around Beethoven, but the fact that there have been a lot of important contributors to music and art that have had and still have disabilities, and also um, have mental health issues as well. And that is something that the Reinventing Beethoven Challenge also wanted to raise awareness around. The other thing that came out of um, the educational community was a digital learning in the pandemic handbook. So it was created using all the materials that they made from learning scenarios and different stories of implementation for other educators to be able to use and kind of learn from as well, from what they've done. And part of the focus of that handbook is also diversity and inclusion, and the learning scenarios and different activities that they've done around this topic. So we've mentioned a few things that is work that we are currently doing or have already achieved. And right now, we would also like to discuss work that is in our roadmap, but we might have started initial discussions around, but haven't actually gotten yet any examples to share. But it's work that is coming between this year and next year, or in a few years' time as well. So one of these things, as I already actually mentioned a bit earlier, which was something that we've wanted to look into for quite some time, is the language in the content of in our the content on Europeana. So some, as I mentioned before, some of them have very old offensive terminologies, and either on the title, either even just visually, it is offensive and problematic, or also in the metadata and in the context itself. Description of the item. And right now, because of Black History Month coming up, we created a gallery showcasing Black people in art. But the problematic thing around this is that there is, within the vocabulary used to describe these paintings, is quite problematic. And one of the ways we have found to temporarily deal with this while the work is ongoing on the long term, is to issue a content warning on the gallery before anyone can see it, that they already are aware that they are going to come across some offensive terminology, so they can opt out before actually viewing the gallery itself. And we're also in discussions already with our design team around how we can make more content warnings for other editorials that we will be working on. And so that is just a temporary solution to a bigger problem, which is that we have quite a bit of content that is not very appropriate today, and work needs to be done to include people that are directly represented in that content, or directly stereotyped in that content to find solutions that help that would help them, and also they would help us decide on how to change that vocabulary in a way that would be more respectful to them, and also the collections on actual cultural heritage. So not only offensive terminologies and such, but actual cultural heritage content that is of minoritized communities, how we find a more respectful way of displaying them in a way that they would like. And so working closer with minoritized communities to come up with solutions is something that we have been discussing. So yeah, so in just to kind of wrap up this this specific slide, what is coming up in the coming years is finding a more respectful way of displaying content, more respectful language, and more respectful display of cultural heritage materials.
Exactly. So then lastly, a few other points that we want to work on in the upcoming year is, apart from those experiments that we did on supporting guest editors in creating editorial for Europeana, we really want to make that a structural part of our editorial guidelines. We want to make sure that this is something that we are doing in an ongoing way and not just as a one-off experiment, but actually want to have this as a structural part of our editorial calendar to invite people from other communities, minoritized communities, underrepresented voices, to really create a very diverse kind of backlog of editorial on Europeana that people can explore and read and learn more about. Secondly, we also want to progress on the work that is ongoing. So our community pact, our code of conduct, the trainings that we're doing, the workshops we're getting to ourselves, learn more about diversity and inclusion in the GLAM space. And we also want to work on the HR policies. And then lastly, part of this presentation has as a goal to also increase the awareness of diversity and inclusion work further than Europeana Foundation itself. So on an aggregator level, on the level of cultural heritage institutions, and just in the wider cultural heritage space itself. So those are the points that we want to work on in the coming year.
So, well, thank you all for listening to us. And of course, we would obviously be very, very happy if anyone wanted to reach out to us. If you have feedback for us, if your institution is working on any of the things we've mentioned, and you would have some some feedback for us on what we could maybe accomplish or do better. We're always happy to learn from others, so we really do encourage you to reach out to us. And well, on the slide, you will be able to see our email addresses as well. So, well, thank you all, and we would be very excited to see how far we come the following year and present again with more accomplishments and learnings.
Thank you.